Now we're going to focus on this Liberal Party meeting that is underway. Now it's the Shadow Ministry after the meeting of the party yesterday to talk about net zero. It does seem a fait accompli that they are going to dump net zero in its current form. But it's what they come up with next, which is the real question here. I want to bring in now political strategist Yaron Finkelstein, who served as advisor to Scott Morrison during his Prime Ministership. Yaron, I just want to show you and our viewers these pictures once again. The front page of every newspaper today, and this was the right walking en masse into that meeting yesterday. It really says it all, doesn't it? Yaron, it really says it all, doesn't it, about where the right is going?
Well, they've turned left at that corridor, I think, which is strange. But look, there's a mood in the party room for this. So it is. And the question now is, and you alluded to this, what are they going to do with it? So maybe this is a moment of some clarity. You know what I generally think about what net zero means to voters versus what Labor's plan to get to net zero means to voters, and there's a huge difference. But if this is the position that the Liberal Party has taken, the question is, what are they going to do and how are they going to sell what their alternative is? So that's where they're at. If this is the decision they take, what does tomorrow look like in the next 2.5 years?
Is there really an if at this point?
Well, probably not. I think that's where they're at, and there's enough gossip about what will come out of the room. And yes, if you've got a calculator, you can do the numbers, and you're right, it's probably where it's at. So I do hope that there are people in that room who are also working out what it is they'll be explaining to Australian voters who may or may not be listening, which is the bigger challenge. If they are, what are you going to tell them about this?
Yeah, that's right. Look, I think they need to pull this off and execute it almost perfectly, because there's a couple of problems here, right? The signals are really to the public, who aren't particularly engaged at the moment, that they don't care about climate change all that much. For younger voters in a city, that is a massive problem when it comes to picking up the seats they need to actually get into government to make this policy actually be worth the paper it's written on. The second thing in here, Yaron, I would say, is that there's not a lot of intellectual rigour behind this. There's not a lot of paperwork to back it up. They've got what they kind of bits and pieces of things, what they took to the last election, the vibe of the thing, and a few other things there. If they can actually get this together and get a clear message and be on board with it, something that the public believe, well, there is a lot of weaknesses in the government here. How do they exploit them?
Well, that is the point to make. It's the government's plan that they have to persuade voters is not working. It's not just about net zero. Net zero has become synonymous with some kind of, as you put it, vibey thing, but it is the vibe. And they now have to deal that they're working against that vibe and come up with something that goes to, we're dealing with climate change, but in this way. And hopefully that alternative policy prescription is what voters might agree with. The key, though, is they haven't yet done the work on exposing the problems with Labor's plan. Just focusing on net zero has not done the job of persuading Australians as to why their energy bills are so high, or why there are problems with, as we've discussed before, companies closing because of the high price of energy. Till they make that connection, voters are still thinking that net zero is worth doing. So they've got two jobs to do. One, destroy what Labor's plan is about in the eyes of voters, and secondly, provide a reasonable alternative.
Yeah, and that reasonable alternative has to be a mix of renewables anyway. So they can't have a scorched earth policy on renewables. They just have to, I don't know how they do this, they have to put forward a proposal where renewables are certainly part of the solution, not the whole solution, but is palatable to both sides of that political and energy argument, right?
Absolutely. If you start a conversation about Australia's energy future saying there is no role for renewables, the voter switches off. That is the harsh reality. We know that from poll after poll after poll, insightful data tells us that people think that something should be done. And they think renewables is part of that. The job for the coalition is to show them that just focusing on renewables may not be the way to go, and they have a plan to get us to a lower emissions future that might sound more practical, less harmful, less expensive.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. But do not start a conversation with a voter in Middle Australia in the seats that you need to win by saying no to renewables.
Yaron, a lot of people will be sitting here watching this morning saying, well, the coalition had 10 years to sort that out. And in that decade, they changed policies and had this internal war over this issue. What has changed?
Well, it's not an unreasonable observation, but
You were there.
it is actually a fair question. But yeah, that's right. And we dealt with the moments that were before us, and we did take the party to sign up for net zero. And now we see what is now, as Scott Morrison has said, 2, 3, 4 years of Labor's plan to get there, and it's causing a lot of issues for Australians, and the coalition is reflecting some of that. I don't agree that it should be all about net zero, but the reality, Laura, is that things have changed. The transition is bumpy. And that's where the coalition has to adapt, because there's certainly problems with Labor's plan to get there.
Yaron, always good to talk to you. We'll see where today ends up and then Sunday too. Thanks so much.